So I'm going to share my Yoni steam story that made a believer out of me. When my next cycle came, it was nothing I had ever experienced before, nor have ever experienced since. And this was 6 or 7 years ago. I did a Yoni steam after a really bad relationship and breakup. It was really the closing of two relationships. So when I got my divorce, I was in a relationship with a really toxic person, unhealed and unhinged individual. I was taking in a lot of harm and abuse, physically, emotionally, and to my uterus. I was not only was this person abusing me, but I was allowing this person to abuse me. When I finally snapped out of it and woke up from the nightmare that I had been living, even though it was like a beautiful nightmare because life was changing so beautifully and exponentially for me, but this was triggering him, and I was suffering the consequences of that for choosing to be with him but still elevating, and him trying to break me down and tear me down and just throw obstacles in any way that he could. This person I spoke about before, he was the surrogate father that I refer to. He had other children, and I recognized that it was his form of entrapment or keeping a connection tied to these women. He would somehow impregnate them, even though he swore that he was a pullout king. No, there's just no way. He tried that with me as well. And I chose to not be a mother to his children, and I chose to not have that type of a soul tie and connection with him. So the final time that I broke up with him, and it was truly final, but I think what solidified that finality was a Yoni theme that I did that I intuitively did. Again, I had been changing already within the relationship, but I was growing and evolving. And in breaking up with him that final time, something led me to do a Yoni theme. Of course, information was coming in as well, but I was reminded of this practice. And so I was already doing herbal teas, I was already fasting, but because it was tied to my uterus and the abuse that I had endured in not only that relationship, but even the one prior to that with dealing with coercion, I decided to do a Yoni steam. And so I brought together all the herbs. I put my music, I set my music, and I set the tone within my space. I was in my room. The sun was pouring into the room. I put the meditative music on, and I sat and did my Yoni steam. I meditated while I was doing the steam. I cried because I needed to do this shedding. And I was just very intentional with that whole process. Again, being intuitively led. So when people say to listen to your spirit, listen to yourself, like truly, it's a whisper. And you may not necessarily know the whys, but do it because it will lead you to God. I did that, and it was beautiful. I felt amazing afterwards. I was so proud of myself. The cycle that came after that Yoni steam was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. There was a lot of healing that had to go into me recognizing that I had been dealing with a form of a demon for quite some time. And that Yoni steam and prayer and meditation that I implemented truly assisted in the shedding in a deeper way than the physical. It just manifested physically. I was able to see it physically, but spiritually, the shedding that transpired was remarkable. And it truly solidified the cutting of the cord and the ending of this vicious cycle. I was bleeding so much, but not only was I heavily bleeding, like I was changing my pad every hour, every 2 hours. At first, it was like every 2 or 3 hours, and then it got to the point where I had to change it every hour, if not shortly within the hour. But not only that, it was dark and it was rank. Don't even judge me, y'all. And if you do, that's your problem because truly, God heals. Okay, God restores. It was foul, and I couldn't explain it because it was so embarrassing because I had to do an event. I was working an event that I could not get out of. I didn't have anybody to replace me for it. And it was a client that I worked with on several occasions. But because of how I was bleeding, I just knew that, okay, let me just bring extra pads. And I had the big overnight pads. I remember I put one on at the start of me having to work. And then I wasn't even like an hour and a half in, and the pad already felt full, and the smell, the odor that I literally could not avoid because it just was what it was. And I remember standing in a spot capturing this one scene, and I turned to look around, and this woman just had like this smell because she could smell something and didn't know where it was coming from, but I knew it was coming from me. And so I ran to the bathroom and changed my pad again. To say that I've never experienced anything like that before in my life, much less after that, was a confirmation of the shedding and the releasing that I had done with that Yoni steam. So truly the reason of this story is to just share with you the power of truly sitting into your seat of power, taking your power back, reclaiming your body and your uterus, and how the Yoni steam can assist in that process when done with intention. Not only was I praying during the sitting part of it, even as I was taking these herbs and blending them and putting them together, the prayer began from the start. And I spoke to the herbs and I asked it to do what needed to be done based on the properties that it already possesses. And so it was ritualistic. I wasn't aware necessarily. I wasn't tapped into that part of myself at the time. Well, I was, but I just wasn't aware of what it was that I was doing until I saw the results of that. And so it was almost like I was just shedding old wounds, old things, and the energy that my womb had been holding from what I experienced within those relationships, especially that second one. And to be quite frank, when he tried to come back into my life after that, because they always do try to circle back, when he did, I was already done. It was released, the cord was cut. There was no way for him to come back in. First, he tried to, I think he had showed up just unannounced, and I was like, be gone. Another time, his call came through, and I blocked him because I was like, I'm done. And he remained blocked for years. And then he came up again. Actually, last year, he came up again on social media. He was never a social media person. He came up on my timeline, and I blocked him there as well. And I do this with anybody. Like once I'm done with somebody and I cut a cord, I will block you on any platform that I can. I don't want any access to you, and I don't want you to have any access to me. So, I blocked him as well. All of the confirmations of truly being done, not only with this person, but with that energy, the energy of deception, the energy of betrayal, the energy of harm, the negative energies, because this is why they say be careful who you tie yourself to and who you connect yourself with, because you are also going to have to battle their demons, and they will leave remnants of themselves with you, even when you break up with them. So when I say, take back your power, it's not just in the physical thing. Sometimes you have to do the energetic and spiritual work. You have to take those teas. You have to do those things. You have to do those baths. But you have to also know and believe that this is truly it. That you are calling in the Spirit and God to guide you and lead you through this process to truly let go. Because some people can say that they let go, but then somehow people find their way back in because they haven't actually let go. You have to not only detach from the person, but detach from the feeling, detach from the emotions that are tied to that person. When I say detach, not in an unhealthy way, coming to terms with and accepting what it was and letting that go. It no longer serves me. That was never actually for me. I don't want any part of this. I don't invite this in and I don't welcome this in. I reject this negative energy and entity. I reject this false persona. So the Yoni theme, it's powerful work. This is not some aesthetic or cosmetic situation. You can get some cosmetic benefits from it with that vaginal rejuvenation, don't get me wrong. But the spiritual aspect of it is so much deeper. And so you really want to have that intention. Whatever way that you approach God, spirit, the creator, the universe, Allah, Elohim, whatever you want to call it, truly don't get stuck on the words and stuff. That's just semantics, okay? However you connect in that way, that is what you're going to do. So whether it's prayer or through singing or through meditation or through breath work, you're going to employ this from the beginning of the process when you were sourcing these herbs, because you want to call in the correct herbs for you as well. So when you're sourcing these herbs, when you're putting these herbs together, you want to speak to the herbs, just like we speak to plants and our trees, and we understand that speaking to your plants will help its health and longevity in life. It is the same thing with the herbs that we are utilizing to consume, ingest, or use in our practices. So you're going to speak to those herbs. You're going to speak to the water. Water holds memory. So you're going to speak to the water. And all of that, as you're putting it, it's all intentional. Have your prayer, set your music. You can have gospel music, worship music. You can have Chantra Seba, we love. You can have whatever music that's going to be of empowerment, of releasing, of shedding, of cleansing, of restoration, of uplifting. That's what you're going to play in the space. And if you want to do this with trusted women who can hold space, women who understand exactly what is actually transpiring, you can do that as well. That only amplifies the energy. But if you're doing this on your own, that's fine as well. And I was in the sunlight, and now that I think of it, because I didn't think of it before, but yeah, being in the sunlight, it does help because now you're absorbing also the sun rays, which is also very rejuvenating. I like to call it the Superman effect because Superman had to go into the sun. That's how he got his energy. That is us humans. Us humans, the sunlight helps. So take in the rays of Ra. If you want to be in a dark space, that's okay too because the womb is dark. It is not exposed to light. The light comes from within. However, whatever works for you, but truly the intention is what matters. And truly be ready to release. And hold that faith. For whomever the message resonates, I see you. Until next time.